Good evening and welcome back to Prime of Midlife. It's Thursday evening and this evening we are talking roughly charities. Because if you saw last night's video, you would know that my intention was to have a Making a Difference video today. However, the place where we were going to go had said, actually, we're really short staffed and we don't want to be rushing. We want to make sure we've got some time for you, so can we do it next week? Absolutely, not a problem, because their need obviously is greater than ours. But it brought into mind with just what's been going on recently and just snippets I've seen or heard on the news. So I know that I don't actually know what the funding was. But seemingly in the UK government, they used to have a fund which they gave to charities. You know, they would help them with funding. And it got cut, obviously. And then it stopped coming from the government and it started to go to the local council. But I don't think it was ring fenced or something because the amount seemingly went down. And the charity that this news article spoke to, and they're like, we don't know if we can keep going without this funding, because the need for their services has gone up so much, but the donations have gone down so much. It's like a perfect storm. And it just sort of occurred to me then, and I was like, oh, that's going to cause a lot of problems. Because I know, yes, you have the Trussell Trust, which does a lot of food banks in the UK. And it's like a company charity thing, whatever. But there's such a lot of smaller charities, especially in rural areas, where it's maybe the church or the community that have pulled together and started a food bank, a warm space, etc., etc. Now, I know that years ago, I had tried to do what I called a friendship club. And I was like, right, there's so many of us. At that time, I was off work looking after my dad when he had just not long come out of hospital. I'd been made redundant, so I stayed off work for a while. I didn't look for anything for a while. And so I was like very looking at the community because I was up and down into the town. And I was like, well, what if we do this thing and we'll just have, come down for a tea or a coffee? It's not based on anything. This group isn't based on anything. It's just like, if you're about, come in for tea and coffee. If you're doing nothing, come in and have a cup of tea. We'll have some biscuits. And I managed that, I think, 6 times because it cost me about 40 or £50 to rent somewhere. So that was money I was paying out my own pocket. And why I'm telling you that is that if that's what I had to do, then obviously charities, small community groups are having to do that as well. If they're wanting to do a community event or such things. And that's why a lot of them have had to expand and get bigger so they can go for funding, or they barely are holding it together. And I think it seems to be going to, it's either one or t'other. And for any of the smaller charities now, it seems it's going to be a big problem for funding coming through because people just don't have the money to donate anymore. But companies, governments, etc., they're not donating the same way that they were either. And the reason they're not donating as much is because people are skint. So they're actually looking for help from the food banks, from the community centres, from the warm spaces. I mean, if we have a bad winter here in the UK, there's going to be a lot of people going to warm spaces, if the warm spaces can afford to run. And the other silly little thought that I had in my head is, I need to knit a lap blanket in like corporate colours. And certainly if you know someone who works in an office where they're maybe, not bringing in quite as much money as they used to or whatever, or there's cost cutting measures going on, be careful, because I can see if you've got central heating in the office, I can see the temperature being turned down a couple of degrees. So you might want a lap blanket, or you might want to give that to someone who works in an office. We're good because we just have a heater. We don't have central heating in the office. It's not centrally controlled. So we just put the heater on when we're cold. But you imagine those big offices and stuff, and you're like, yeah, someone else is controlling that temperature, and if they want to save money, turning that down a degree doesn't make it cold, just makes it a bit less warm, just enough to be going, oh, just not quite warm yet. It saves them thousands through the year. So yeah, if you know someone in that situation, time to be knitting them a corporate lap blankie. Catch you later.